two best friends. One of them is dead. The other one is serving a life sentence in the penitentiary.
At least in prison, you can still tell your story.
Even if your story is about betraying your own best friend. It all started in Little Springtown, Texas.
Home for me was okay, to a certain extent. My mom and I got along fine.
Christine was a good girl. She helped clean up, she helped do the dishes, she did everything she was told.
My father passed away when I was 10. That was pretty tough for me. When my mom remarried, I felt left out, like I didn't belong anymore. Until a new girl came to town.
I was born in Fort Worth, and I was used to city life. But too many bad things were happening in the city.
Misty Mayo had had a bit of a troubled life.
Misty, growing up, she was a little badass. She told you what she thought when she thought it, and she didn't care who was in the way.
I was the second youngest of 7. In a family that big, you gotta be ready to shout to be heard.
Growing up in the household it had hard times, but we was a family.
Her brother, in 1993, was murdered by gang members.
I think it hardened Misty in a way. In a way, I think it hardened all of us.
My parents moved us to Springtown, Texas, to get out of the big city because there's a lot of crime and drama.
That's how we ended up in the country.
I was a freshman, and Misty was a sophomore.
She wasn't really like Misty at all.
At first, Christine was kind of like my sidekick. I think she was happy to have someone pay attention to her.
When I would come out there and visit my parents, Misty was always around with Christine. You could not pull those two apart.
Christine was like a part of our family. She was always at my parents' house, always at my apartment. She was always with Misty.
When I got pregnant, my baby's father was a black guy, and my folks weren't okay with that.
Misty asked me to let Christine stay with me after her mom kicked her out.
We started to get used to her having that baby, but it just wasn't her time. Christine was always kind of following me. But when it came to getting pregnant, she led the way. And less than a year after her pregnancy, I found out I was expecting.
Misty's boyfriend at the time was named Stephen Gunnels. I knew him pretty good. Stephen Gunnels' nickname was Psycho. In my opinion, she had no business being with him.
Misty was crazy about him. After Misty had Dante, Christine was there.
Dante was born just after Misty's 18th birthday. I turned 17 the next week.
I gave her my baby's clothes. I gave her everything.
Looking back, maybe I should have stayed home. But I didn't want to. I wanted Dante to be near his daddy, and that was in town, in Fort Worth.
Christine moved in with Misty in Fort Worth, so Misty wouldn't be there by herself.
I was dating a guy named Robert, and he came over this one night with his buddy, Jamian. They brought along a girl named Edwana, but everyone called her Mimi. Misty and Stephen were asleep in the next room. One of the guys got an idea to break into a tire shop that was right next door.
The men are the ones that actually committed the burglary, and the women served as lookouts.
Jamie and Robert said they would be right back. And not even 5 minutes later, we heard a crash.
The items that they could carry, that they could physically carry, they carried up to Misty Mayo's apartment, and they stored them there.
Missy told them they had to have everything out of our apartment.
Misty went back to bed, but Stephen stayed up to help the guys move some of the stolen stuff.
Stephen did help take some tires to the car, and he did leave with them.
The Fort Worth Police Department initially got involved in this case as the burglary of a building, and police were called to investigate that. The initial burglary report was reported on December the 6th of 2000.
Misty was anxious about the tire shop burglary because the stuff was still in her apartment.
There were 2 witnesses that actually saw 4 individuals carrying property into her apartment. She's not going to take the rap for these guys, and she told the truth.
The police was already there before we made it back to the apartment. And Christine said she knew something wasn't right because Misty never leaves her door open. When me and Christine made it back to the apartment, the police officer said just the 2 ladies we're looking for.
They brought us to the station to ask us questions.
In the beginning, Christine lied. So I told Christine she needed to tell the truth, being that was her friend.
She admitted that she was acting as a lookout for the police while these other perpetrators committed the burglary of the building.
The people that were involved in the tire shop burglary did, in fact, implicate Stephen Gunnels, AKA Psycho.
I always thought I could count on Christine to have my back. But telling on Stephen? That put my family at risk. We went over to Jamien's house. Christine and Mimi wanted to warn him and Robert that the cops might be looking for them. They were the 2 guys who came up with this whole idea. When we got there, they started asking us a bunch of questions about how the cops found us and what we had told them.
When they asked Misty what happened, she got so mad at them, she stormed out of the house. That made them suspicious.
Christine and Mimi had talked to the police just like I had. All they had to do was tell the guys the truth.
Mimi and Christine, they both turned on Misty. Christine told Jamie Nickerson and Robert Fuller that Misty snitched on you.
I wasn't there. I didn't know what Christine was telling them, and I really didn't care. This wasn't my problem. They had gotten us into this mess. I went to see Stephen at his mom's house to let him know what was going on. That's when Christine invited me out to dinner with the others.
After we left the restaurant, we were supposed to go to the movies.
Misty and I were in the back seat with Mimi. I had Dante on my lap. Jamien was driving with Robert next to him.
We pulled into a park. All I knew was somebody hit me.
Misty was kidnapped in her own vehicle. She was put in the back seat of her own vehicle and beat over and over again.
At one point, she was shoved into the floorboard of the car.
Jamie took me to hit Misty. I did hit Misty. And she looked at me and asked me, were they gonna kill her?
Christine did the first initial step to get Misty and Dante in that vehicle. There was one point they stopped at a store. She had the opportunity to tell that clerk, dial 911, this girl's been kidnapped, and she did not elect to do that.
They tried taping her head with electrical tape, and she licked it off. She was trying to fight back, and Christine pressed the tape down over her mouth.
It was because we couldn't tell if she was breathing or not. And I put my hand over her mouth to see if I could feel any air coming out, and I couldn't feel any air coming out.
They took her body and they dragged her by her hair to a field. And they stripped her of all of her clothes. And they poured motor oil all over her body, theoretically to obscure evidence, to make it so that their fingertips could not be lifted.
They stopped on the way back after dumping Misty's body and got some sausage rolls and orange juice and went on like nothing has ever happened.
I was freaking out. I had nightmares for a very long time. Missy and I had a very good relationship, and I loved her very much. She was like a sister to me. I'm very sorry for everything that's happened.